How was your journey at Paytm?
I came to Paytm as part of our acquisition. My company was acquired by Paytm. My team built the first version of the QR code build system during demonetization.
How you are gonna go about building jar as a, let's say, or investing in gold as a common user behavior on a day-to-day level?
I will disagree with the premise that saving as a intent was non-existent. People wanted to save. People
Mhm.
always, anybody who wonder at the end of the month like पैसा कहाँ चला जाता है यार समझ में नहीं आता. He or she wants to save. The
Hmm.
reason is they cannot mobilize that intent to basically execute on that intent is essentially because there are not smooth solutions available, effective solutions available. That's where JAR comes in.
Personally, as a PM, I think there is always this debate, right? How much should we know about technology? Where should we draw the line, right?
I believe a PM should know enough engineering or technology to have a decent conversation with engineering team.
Anyone starting in product management, what do you think would have been the difference 20 years back, 10 years back?
Behind every app you open, every tap you make, there's a story of people building products for millions of us. Hi, I'm Rati, and at Enzo Lab, we started this podcast to share what we have learned while helping startup design and scale digital products. This is Product and People, where we bring you real conversations with India's top product minds. From scaling design systems to finding that tiny insight that sparks a $1 billion idea, we decode how product and people grow together. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, and you can also listen to our full audio on Spotify. Now let's get started.
Hi Prashant, great to be catching up after a long while.
Likewise.
So, how has been life recently, managing the entire product, and everything at Jar?
So yeah, it's been pretty good. We've been profitable now, and some
Awesome.
new products are in pipeline. So yeah, exciting times.
Awesome. So, I think obviously I met you a few years back, and once I knew about your entire journey, I think I've been fascinated. Multiple years building your own venture, then at Paytm and now at Jar. I think you have been the pivotal force behind some of the greatest product in fintech. So before we get started deep diving on, let's say, all of these and your journey and your guidance for the PMs, how has these last few years been at product management? And before we go into anything else, how have you been looking at from a distance the evolution that is happening in product management as a space? So any 2 cents on your entire journey and then the changes that you are seeing recently?
Well, my entire journey has been very fulfilling. Like I couldn't have asked for a better career trajectory in the sense like we started as a an engineer in support and then I went into product management for mobile apps and then fintech, run my own venture in between. So I got like full 360-degree view of how the great products are shaped and what goes into building the sausage.
Mm-hmm.
That's been very rewarding, both like from a skill point of view and as well as from an experience point of view. I got to work with some of the best brands in the world. In addition to that, if you look at macroscopic, like bird's eye view of the field of product management, I believe it's very interesting how the trajectory of the discipline of product management in India has kind of overlapped with the same time frame. In the sense,
Awesome.
like initially all the consumer product. There was no consumer product from India. With Flipkart and other, we had what we call the early days of product management, which was primarily project management and like delivery and like building like the interface layer and all. And now, as we cross into the MBU from the early adopters, like first 100 million afterward, a very new, unique, native Indian behavior are being manifesting in the digital products, and we can deciphering that has been a big part of what brings me to work every day. So yeah, exciting times.
Awesome. And from an overall perspective, Prashant, for anyone starting in product management, what do you think would have been the difference 20 years back, 10 years back, and now?
Well, today you have more podcast to begin with, so you can cut short the learning. there are also a big cadre of people who have been into the trenches before and who have seen the real world problems and how to like deal with them. So I think
Yeah,
the availability, the depth and the availability of talent pool is huge. And there
okay,
are uniquely Indian ways of building product which are shaping up. So that
awesome.
was not the case. Pretty much you have to be a self-learner. When we started out, it was pretty much we have to be our self-learner. We can take out some framework or a leaf out of the book of some people in Bay Area and all, but pretty much you have to repurpose that.
Hmm.
So I think within as a community, product management is far more evolved today, and we help each other a lot. And discipline and frameworks are far more relevant to Indian context today.
Understood. Understood. No, no, I echo that sentiment. I think 15 years back when started to build out my first product, I think there were only playbooks that existed about Google, Meta, and what they have done for people in the US and UK. And there was no playbook that existed on how to tackle, let's say, I think there was this crazy word that came in the NHB or the next half billion about people who were getting access to the internet in 2017. And then obviously how people in India now use vernacular product. I think we'll come to what your learnings has been with Jar, but I think it is really, really very, very different than how the first few blocks of the internet were created. And I also see the evolution in terms of, I think, overall level where today, I think with AI, then obviously RAG and now agentic AI, I think a lot of things have started to evolve and change very very quickly, where you can perceive the user's intention and you can also personalize at scale, which was not very very possible on an overall level. I feel that with AI coming into the picture, I think today there are infinite possibilities on what you can build
Okay,
and what you can optimize, and there
definitely.
choosing what to build and why to build, I think, becomes very very important. So, in this age where you can build anything and everything every 5 minutes, what is your recommendation, sir, before we deep dive into some things, that what should PMs be wary of instead and not get, let's say, lost into?
BMP value of is essentially the fashion, meme of the day, the what is in the work. For example, let's say there's constant. I keep hearing from youngsters that product manager is the CEO of the product. No, hold your horses. CEO is the CEO of the product. Product manager is not the CEO of the product. You are at the most with the voice of customer.
That's true.
So another thing which kind of I stress a lot is essentially to be in direct touch with your customer. It shouldn't be intermediary somewhere like, oh, you have a research department and they are talking to them and I'll read the report and that will suffice. No, that's a very limited approach. I think
Sure.
you should talk to the customer almost every day and you should have a very finger on the pulse for the customer's pain point. And I think that's very important.
Understood. Understood. No, no, that is very, very powerful, Shanta. I think talking to the users daily and obviously keeping a tab on their pulses. I have seen that some of the PMs believe more in frameworks and some are very, very grounded in how their users are actually thinking. And both may have their different career trajectory or ways of operating. But generally, if you have a very, very strong idea of what your users actually want, and you maybe do not follow any framework but actually serve it to them, their chances of creating new habits and around the product that you are serving I much be might higher than you forcing them to operate in a particular way.
I believe like there's always a pressure to be know it all and to always have the one to be the one in the room with the answer. But I believe ignorance is a very good place to start. Where you should say, "Oh, I don't know the answer of this thing. I'll go get back to my user and check with them and verify. Means you are not the idea person. Contrary to the public belief, the product manager is not the idea person. He's not need not to have a lot of ideas all the time. He
Yeah.
should be able to validate the idea so that we don't have to release something to know that this is not going to fly. It's like more like downstream defect correction. We should avoid all the downstream defect corrections. Yeah.
No, no, that is a brilliant way to put it, that I
Hmm.
think the PMs is there to validate and not sort of bear the brunt of making hundreds of releases and
Yeah.
then spending maybe the entire team's bandwidth across product tech and design. But yeah, I think at the start of the podcast itself, we have brilliant nuggets from you, sir. So let us take the step back. And I think we realized that, as you also mentioned, you started with, let's say, entrepreneurship after a brief stint in the industry, and you have then, I think, donned various hats, been an entrepreneur, and then obviously worked with one of the largest fintech globally, Paytm, and then now at Jar. So, before we deep dive, just wanted to understand that what do you think has been, let's say, the common traits as well as differences of being, let's say, a founder and then an operator in the product industry?
That's an interesting question, actually. As a founder, you have a more of a moral authority and more of a deeper context about the user, about the product. So that kind of gives you a lot of leeway. You can basically bet on your instinct a lot more because that instinct is informed by a lot of customer exposure and exposure to the multiple release of this product itself. Like, you have gone through multiple release cycle, you have talked to 1,000 customers, so you know what works, what doesn't work, who my user is. Anybody who joins your team afterward is slightly catching up on it. So as a
Understood.
founder, you have like more of a moral authority and the depth,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm not saying that as an operator you can't get it, but it takes time. If
Understood.
you join late stage, and also the context building, it takes. Some companies are good at it because of the documentation and training and orientation, but most companies are too busy building things that they don't pay enough attention to this part. So that's why operators are somewhat at a disadvantage.
Understood.
So that's one thing I believe there's a fundamental difference. And this is the like the difference and similarities essentially. At the same time, you are also owner of a certain experience. As
Understood.
a operator, as a product manager or a VP product, you have your like blast radius of your decisions are slightly limited, but within that blast radius you have like good companies, at least you have enough expertise.
Understood. Understood. So, on an overall level, Prashant, I think going back to your entrepreneurship days, how did you come up with that idea? Because I think when I read about the idea in detail, I think I was really amazed by you predicting intent, if we got that right, in your first venture. And I think it was way beyond, let's say, I think way ahead of time in a way. What was your learning that led you to sort of start up at Shifu? And then how did you, let's say, understand user behavior then? And what were some of the amazing insights that you got back then? And then how, when you look at what you were doing back then in terms of building the product as a founder, right, along with your team, what were the, let's say, some of the key learnings that you believe that you were able to get about product management that have still stayed with you to today?
And there are a lot of questions packed into this, so let me deconstruct it. Like, so first is essentially ahead of the time. Every startup which doesn't scale was probably ahead of its time. That's what I come to believe. Maybe ahead of the time in terms of the venture ecosystem being supportive, or technology being supportive, or the team, or in general the cultural movement is there or not. So, but basically, at the same point, there is no time as such. There is no right time to do anything. Sometimes you are just lucky. Like, having said that, how did we come up with the idea of Shifu? Like any most entrepreneurial ventures, it came out of the need to scratch our own itch. Essentially, I was working in a company called Spice, and we were building a lot of applications.
Okay.
And two of the problem I run into, one as a user of mobile phones. I used to travel a lot, so as a user of mobile phone, I used to face this problem all the time. That today I'm in, let's say, San Francisco, and I open my phone book. My phone book used to be arranged in F1 vehicle order. Tomorrow I am in Noida, same. Day after I go to my hometown of Bikaner, and there your phone book was not basically taking into account your location vector. That okay,
Understood.
the location has changed, the chance it is still very static, and which is symptomatic of a broader design limitation. That phone, you even though we call the phone as smartphone, the phone UI was not smart, it was not adapting based on my context. So
Okay.
we thought, what if a phone book can adjust to its context?
Yeah.
So, for example, if I'm opening it in San Francisco, it shows four of my friends who I usually call, and that data is already there. The
Yeah.
location data, if you simply you overlap the location data over the call log, you can easily figure out that, hey, this guy, whenever he's in San Francisco, he calls these three people, or whenever he's in Bikaner, he calls these two people. Every day, weekday on the morning, he calls his driver, he calls his maid, he calls his boss when he's getting late, or weekend, he calls his girlfriend, he calls his parents, so on and so forth, right? So all the time series data, location data, when you overlap it with your call log, you can get a lot of insight. So we started with this idea of building a smartphone book. And later on, we realized that this design limitation exceeds far beyond the phone book. It is pretty much everything in your smartphone is not learning from your behavior.
Yep. Yep.
So we decided to initially, like any first-time entrepreneur who is like a little bit delusional, which is a prerequisite, I believe. Our idea was to build an intelligence layer for the entire phone, and the idea was that we identify around 166 or 167 screens or
Hmm.
combinations of screens where you can make some difference in the experience of a user if you apply the data-driven understanding of the user behavior.
Understood.
So that's where the idea started, and we started with the color, the ring, the phone ring. We started with call log. Started with phone book and to-do list. So yeah,
Understood.
that's where we started.
Understood.
And
And yeah, so how did users react to it? Was it a B2C product? Was it a B2B product? And how did, let's
it
say,
was a
the
direct to
initial?
customer product. It was a consumer facing company. We built an
Understood.
app, uploaded it on Play Store. It was pretty good. Uh, First day, I still remember we got around 120 or so download, and one
Awesome.
person somewhere in like Turkey was using it, and he was a French guy living in Turkey, and he was using it, and his name has something like an apostrophe, like Charles de Gaulle, like the apostrophe in his name, and our parser of the JSON was not having support for Unicode, so it was
Understood.
crashing, and we were not able to install. It was middle of the night, and this guy is writing us an email that I'm not able to install this product, and we are responding. We are trying to debug, and then my co-founder Dipash figured out that this is the reason crash is happening, and we basically compiled a new build, uploaded, and sent it to him, and he was able to install. And he was saying thank you, and we were like, man, it's the middle of the night, and at least here it's middle of the night, and you are still trying free version of my APK installing and still failing, and you have been incredibly patient with us. I should be the one saying thank you. And that was like aha moment that if you are doing something exciting, something different, people are tolerant. People are very, very tolerant of like half-baked idea if the idea itself is very promising. So half-baked implementation. If the promise is like good, people are very tolerant. I still
Understood.
like feel warmth. Yeah, people took it very kind. They liked it a lot in certain pockets. For example, our biggest market was India, and then Turkey, Russia, German, yeah, and then Dubai and UAE. And so at some and we also did in Brazil. We did very well. At
Understood.
some point, one point, we basically got our application translated into Portuguese language
Okay.
because it was very popular there in Russian also, and then we also get translated into simplified Chinese. So yeah,
Understood.
so yeah, and then we went to Google I/O and we showed it to folks at Google. Some of the regional Play Store managers used to highlight it, and eventually we got highlighted on the homepage of Google Play,
Awesome.
where we were categorized as one of the innovative application. We got featured by Time Magazine as a interesting to-do app. They compiled a list of interesting approach to productivity, and our app was featured there. One of my high point personally was being able to talk to Robert Scoble, the famous technology blogger, and
Yeah.
he invited us on his show. So yeah, that's high point. Good memories. Good memories. Yeah.
No, I can see, and I think some great, interesting work because I think the initial adopters generally are very patient, and I think it shows the power of the product in terms of we solving a real, genuine problem. And I'm sure that person would have really tried your app afterwards as well, but was one of the initial feedback givers, which is very,
Yeah.
very
That
important
that
when.
year That year, on 31st of December, 12 o'clock, there were around 11 installation going on. We were like, wow, it's like people are welcoming New Year. And People are first thing they're doing in the new year is to install our app. That meant a lot for us.
No, I
Crazy
know that
time, good
joy.
memories.
Yeah, yeah. I know that joy as a product leader or maybe as a founder in your case, seeing those first users, even at the wee of the early morning at 4 a.m.,
Yeah.
2 a.m., and still willing to give feedback. But I think you mentioned a very, very powerful line, sir, which
Mm.
for the audience I would want to take a note, where you said that if you're solving a really critical problem, people are generally patient. So you have to, let's say, figure out and distill your ideas very, very clearly. And then obviously
Yeah.
one learning that I got, despite being a small team, you just releasing the first product, you took that one email also very, very seriously, and that give you one edge case which might
Mm.
at a very large scale might have, let's say, created some chaos. So I think being very anal about everything working fine, I think as a founder and as a PM, is both very important. So yeah, thank you for sharing those two very, very great insights with us. One thing that I also realized, I think you briefly touched upon it, but caught my attention was, I think Shifu was, or the product was used by people across different countries in different language, and then you translate it. So any learnings on how did you manage all of these different user bases from different geographies together? Any key interesting product insight about, let's say, geographies and amalgamation that came into the picture?
Yeah, localization is a big challenge, and it's been like I've dealt with that beast multiple time in my career. And one thing I come to believe is essentially most people think of localization as something which can be done afterward. You release an MVP, you release the version one, you get a PMF, and then we'll think of localization, because the core idea is that localization is something which you where you slap a UI on top of an existing infrastructure or
Understood.
existing backend. But to do a good job of localization, for example, you need to basically have a kind of an engineering discipline and design discipline, which is need to be consciously cultivated. So, for example, if you are doing a comparison like male female, like show all the versions for male, all the dresses for female, so on and so forth, you can easily do implement this by passing MALE or FPMALE in the comparison string, and it will serve the purpose. But the moment you start doing localization,
Mm-hmm.
then it will have to basically pass every language as a category. So basically, every comparison should be done on a numerical, not on a string.
Sure,
You
sure.
know, in the same way, every user-facing message has to come from a resource file. It shouldn't be hard coded, because
Understood.
then language parameter can be passed in the session variable, and then all the relevant resource files are accessed. So these kind of a thing, if done early on, can give you a lot of trouble downstream. Otherwise, you are basically doing a lot of yak shaving. You are basically doing a lot of correction which should have been taken care of at the design level.
Understood.
How much time we have? It's like I can give you a talk on localization, but then it's also you have to also take care of the nuance of the language you are targeting. For example, there is no there are certain language don't have a specific words. Like for there is no specific word for home page in Hindi. It's mukh.
Understood.
But
Mhm.
if you use mukh, half of the India will not understand. English speaking well will not understand what is mukh. So yeah, we need to take care of all these nuances in localization.
I think you mentioned a very, very great point for the audience is that we have to find that intricate balance of how much to localize and what is, let's say, the
Yeah.
commonly
Yeah.
known terms that are out
Yeah.
there. And I think a learning for me as well, I have seen that if you delay localization till a point, I think later it gets very, very difficult while you are building that product purely from a tech and product perspective to sort of
Yeah.
fine tune your product to different languages. I was saying that at Shifu, I think there was a great work across geographies. So, what did you realize that were the limits that were related to, let's say, limits of prediction, predictability, and then localization, then, which now you believe at JAR and any other product that you have been a part of has been solved and you can even take a step further? So, what has changed, particularly from a localization perspective?
Back in the day, what we were doing was essentially where our job was divided into two big parts. One was the back end infrastructure,
Hmm.
along with the intelligence engine or what you call as the prediction engine, and then
Okay.
one was the front end. Uh, because of the maturity of the technology, and we have to build all three of these things together.
Okay.
you know so we have to build the infrastructure for syncing, user management, and like all the CRUD operations and stuff like that. Also, whatever data you accumulate, you have to run insight on that. So there were two people, means one machine learning engineer and other one of my co-founder Michael. They were like working exclusively on that. Dipansh and other engineer were basically focusing on the front end. We could have saved a lot of tech. You see, we were not a tech company. Let me put it this way: we were a technology company in terms of providing the user experience.
Understood.
If given half a chance, we would have saved ourselves from that algorithmic complexity because there were a lot of iteration involved. Today, those technologies are available off the shelf. With LLM and all, we could have done a far better job.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Sure.
so that part has bit. A lot of things are available off the shelf, which we have to build a very rudimentary implementation because algorithms were not readily available.
Understood.
So yeah.
No, fair point. And looking back, I think since you were mentioning, for example, if I'm in San Francisco and I call three people and you were able to predict me, what exactly, let's say, did the users actually behave in the way you had predicted that they would, or there were few learnings that you kept on having as you were scaling the product?
Yeah. uh, People actually, what we call as the missed call management, callback management was a big problem.
Okay.
I'm in the middle of a meeting, series of the meeting during the course of the day, and I got 4 or 5 missed call, and I can return this missed call during my Uber ride home. But if only somebody could remind me,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Now the thing is, I usually forget, and that's why
Fair
that's the
point.
use case Shifu was serving.
Sure.
Now the thing is, there are certain cultural nuance we kind of choose to we were not really aware of until we launched the product in the wild. For example, in America, this feature was not used a lot. They were using other functionalities because in America the culture is of leaving a voicemail. If you
Understood.
are having a missed call, you leave a voicemail. In India, if you have a missed call, the onus is on the receiving party to return the call. At the same time, we also have a learning about the prioritization. In the sense, not
Hmm.
all missed call are important. So if you
Understood.
simply show these are the 5 missed call,
Hmm.
the cognitive overload of that thing will be very high. So people
Understood.
will probably ignore it. You have
Yeah.
to figure out that out of his boss, his girlfriend, his mom, his landlord. If it is the beginning of the month, maybe the landlord's call is very important. So you
Yeah.
should say
Yeah.
you might want to return. At the same time, you also have to look at the duration. For example, you know that this is a time where he typically calls for talks for around 15-20 minutes, or he's free for 15-20 minutes. And this is the gentleman, like his landlord, he talked 5 minutes, mom, he talked 5 minutes, but let's say his boss, the call stretches. So maybe first fill in the 15-minute call with the
Yeah.
15-minute
Yeah.
window. So that kind of a sorting was something which took us a while to figure it out. But see, the thing with such kind of a behavioral product is that no matter how deep dive you do and how much of a research you try to do, version 3 will eventually be the version 1. You will launch something, you will learn that, oh, this is not exactly how user want to use it. You fix it, you launch it, user give you some feedback, you fine tune it. So it's usually take 3 iteration before you get the first version which is like somewhat closer to what user want. So the speed become very essential.
Understood. Okay. No, no,
Hmm.
that is phenomenal in terms of a prediction based tool. Let's say finding it difficult to predict the cultural nuances and how people behave in US versus India.
Yeah, and imagine you have to like deal with Indians in US now. It's not like that US telco number or US IP address will solve the problem for you.
Yeah.
There are Indians in the US who still don't leave voicemail messages.
Yeah. No, no, that is very, very awesome. I think persona has, let's say, different splits of persona in a particular
Yeah.
region. But yeah, I think so. Basically, a bunch of interesting work would have happened at Shifo, and then obviously, given I think the tech in the prediction space, the ML and the LLMs and everything has become very, very much better now in a way and
Mhm.
much accessible. How do you think that things have changed when you are using, let's say, So what we realize is that obviously we have not talked a lot about jar, and we'll come to it, but we believe that at jar also you are trying to predict and shape user behavior towards, let's say, financial investing and saving. So at the intersection of this, what are the learnings from your time at Shifu that actually work, and what do you think has been a change in the user behavior that is not working right now, and you are not able to, let's say, copy paste whatever you have learned in the past and you have to relearn or unlearn all of that?
Android ecosystem per se was a little more open. You
Okay.
have access to a lot more data points earlier back in the day, and today
Right.
it's more restrictive. Like, the way they send background application to sleep today is a big problem if you want to stay in background and like have some event listener on and all.
Mm.
So that's there. At the same time, backend capability has increased. Your ability to ship something on the fly without having to upgrade,
Yeah.
through progressive web and all, is pretty phenomenal. We could have done a lot. You have to just move some pixel. You don't need to do an APK refresh and all.
Yeah.
So that's something which we believe has changed. What I can copy paste from there to jar, well, I believe human nature hasn't changed much.
That's true.
People still want to, like, people still have free time,
Mhm.
and they use their free time with the not in the most not in the most optimal way. For example, if you are having a smoke break, or if you're going for a chai break, or you're sitting on the toilet in the morning, you pull out your phone and first thing you do is Instagram or WhatsApp.
Yeah.
And then you realize, oh, I spent so much time on this, I could have read that email. Or I could buy 10 rupees worth of gold.
Understood.
So if you nudge people at the right time, those context window appear throughout the day. That
Hmm.
behavior hasn't changed, and these signals are still available. Some more easily accessible, some less, but those context windows appear, and your ability to nudge user in that context window essentially makes all the difference. For example, one context window can be data driven. Like, whenever somebody receives an OTP message,
Hmm. Hmm.
that means he is made a transaction. That means he is in a mindset or that space, safe space, or that kind of conducive space where he can make a decision about spending 10, 20, 30 rupees.
That's true.
Of course, it don't have to be a Uber message, because that means he just stepped out,
Yeah.
from
Articulation.
but so that something, that signal available on device. Then there are such a certain cultural signal like Shubh Muhurat.
Yeah.
So we send a notification on Shubh Muhurat. That context window is externally forced. It's not device driven.
Yeah.
So you send a notification on Shubh Muhurat that, hey, this is Shubh Muhurat, buy gold. People
Understood.
buy. So basically, those behavioral shift in humans are slightly slow, and it's
Understood.
very, very context and cultural specific. So that domain come with your domain. So if today if you are doing selling gold, you have to look at those cultural variable differently than when you are selling a productivity application.
No, that is phenomenal on how you mentioned about finding that right context window when, let's say,
Mm.
the user is, in a way, we can predict that they are about to do a particular behavior, finding the relevance with what you are trying to solve. It can be
Yeah.
selling gold or it can be productivity, and then merging both the two and sort of getting
Yeah.
them to act on it. I think that seems like a really, really great insight, and thank you again
Mm.
for sharing that. Now,
Mhm.
when we come to gold, I think one of the sort of gold obviously has been the phenomenal run from an investment point of view. Obviously, with the shape the markets are right now, I think obviously everyone is looking back at gold. But saving and investing are two different behaviors that did not exist in the Indian market. Investing, I think, has been recently coming up. So,
Mm.
what do you think you had to sort of maybe take a step back and define how you are going to go about building jar as a, let's say, or investing in gold as a common user behavior on a day to day level?
Well, I will disagree with the premise that saving as a intent was non-existent.
Okay.
People wanted to save. People
Mm-hmm.
always, anybody who wonder at the end of the month, like, पैसा कहाँ चला जाता है यार, समझ में नहीं आता. He or she wants to save. The
Hmm.
reason is they cannot mobilize that intent to basically execute on that intent is essentially because there are not smooth solutions available, effective
Understood.
solutions available. That's where jar comes in. And if you look at gold,
Hmm.
it has not only it has a cultural uh, affinity, it's also has a certain aspiration value. So, for example, if you are a school teacher, or if you're a rickshaw puller, or if you're an auto driver, you've been driving all your life in front of a gold shop, and you really want to participate in that gold economy. You really want to say that, okay, I wish I could buy a little bit of gold because gold prices are going to go up. But because price of participation was at least 2000 rupees,
Understood.
it was impossible for you, right? But what we do with digital gold is we basically tokenize that asset class, and we say that, okay, you now you can have fractional ownership. You can say, I can now buy gold worth rupees 10. And
Understood.
that kind of open up a whole new market, which was before this was willing but not able to participate. A lot of growth come from that side of the equation.
Understood. Understood. So you're saying that that behavior existed, but people were not able to showcase that
Yeah,
because the entry point or the entry barrier was very high. Now, because of the fractionalization of the asset class and because
yeah,
of the tokens that are available much cheaper, I think you are able to enable people in a way and empower people to start with their
yeah.
investment journey much quicker. I think that's a
Empower is a very patronizing thing. It's essentially we are the one who are being empowered by them, essentially by them participating in this market. It's like cell phone. People used to think that people in India, they have this Maslow's hierarchy of need and this and that, and then you realize they are creating TikTok, and they are participating in all kind of thing like Dream 11 and you name it. So and jar.
no,
Yeah.
understood.
Yeah, so
Understood.
whenever you bring down the price of participation, new market always open. Tata Nano. Sometimes the experiment works, sometimes doesn't. But yeah,
I
yeah.
think Tata Nano is a fantastic product at a very, very cheap price point. However, I think there were some gaps that we saw. Just stepping back, I think one of the excellent things that you also mentioned, Prashant, was that basically you measure, let's say, whatever SMS people are sort of getting. And
Uh,
in a way, for
uh,
example, if it is an Uber message, it is that people are, let's say, stepping out, and then if you send them a nudge, I think it's not the right thing because
Good
they are
idea. Yeah,
already going to.
yeah.
So how do you, what would be your suggestion on how do, let's say, PMs and designers in our community actually understand that when and where should we actually go ahead and nudge people, and where, let's say, this might overboard and might lead to an uninstall, right? So it feels like to me that there is a very thin line. What is your playbook, what is your framework that you teach your team and jar to follow?
So there is no one size fit all solution. For example, this instance of Uber message. So let's
Yeah.
say you're getting an OTP or you're getting a withdrawal message that 120 rupees withdrawn from on behalf of Uber.
Yeah.
That message can be interpreted in two ways. A, the person is just stepping out, or the person is just booked.
Understood.
That means he will be in a car and he will have 20 minutes of free time. How do you make sense of it?
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
so then you have to figure out that, okay, it's this time of the day. User usually, historically, his SMS data tell me that this all has happened and all. So yeah, that's where the uniqueness of your product comes into the picture. You have to be first principle driven, you know and humans are very predictable, but in a very unique way. In the sense,
Understood.
like, your user cohort will be very, very predictable, but
Okay.
it will not be similar to my user cohort. So
Understood.
there is no say, other way than to pick up the phone and talk to them and see the animal in its natural habitat. That's very, very important. I
Understood.
mean, I wish I had a very formulaic answer where I can say that, put these three values in and it will tell you the magic number. No,
I
unfortunately
think
not.
talking to the user is that framework then, and then being
Yeah,
anal about it and doing it repetitively so that you are able to
yeah.
marry them, what behavior they'll demonstrate, and then how do you tie that up to building a feature. Since we are
Yeah.
talking about gold so much, Prashant, I think the Paytm's golden era, right? I think when everything happened, I think you found yourself being a part of that journey as well.
Hmm.
And in a way, I think when we are talking about Shifu, we are talking about Jar. I think Paytm has been one of the pivotal players in terms of building our behavior of transacting online.
Hmm.
India, as a society, if I look back at least 20 years, and this is obviously my own opinion, we were largely a cash driven economy. But now we are obviously, our prime minister spoke about UPI just a couple of days back, and the power of tech that we see. So, before we deep dive into anything, how was your journey at Paytm? How were you scrambling across different ideas, and where did all of those groundbreaking ideas came from?
I came to Paytm as part of our acquisition. My company was acquired by Paytm, and my first assignment there was to basically revamp the recharge and bill payment vertical. So that
Understood.
like defined my first 6 months. It was mad scrambling for engineers, designers, and getting the design approved and integration with all the telecom operators and payment aggregators and all. Good fun, fixed a lot of issues. Then I moved on to DIY merchant onboarding. We have the mandate was to build the Stripe of India, where
Okay.
merchant can come on board. But eventually the whole demonetization thing happened,
Yeah.
and we were again scrambling. So yeah, this is one uh, chaos after another. So then I moved. So yeah, we my team built the first version of the QR code build
Awesome.
system during demonetization and DIY merchant onboarding. Later on, I also managed the seller side of the operation for e-commerce and messaging and travel vertical.
Mhm. No, first of all, I did not know in detail about that you and your team were behind sort of the QR code
Mostly my
experiment.
team.
Yeah, yeah. No,
Mostly
no,
my
I
team.
understand that. But where did the idea come from? Because I think as of today, in a way, you and your team have shaped how we transact every time, right? So, how did you come about that? Or not only you, but where did the team find that relevance? What was the groundbreaking insight? And if you could just spend maybe few minutes sharing the initial experimentation, I'm sure that it would not have hit the ground running. There have been a lot of iteration and sleepless nights that would have gone behind building that.
Yes and no. Actually, the thing
Okay.
with technology vector is that certain technological change, step change in technologies are so powerful that user behavior kind of gets shaped. You
Okay.
know, if you lower the price of flight, people will fly.
Understood.
Whether it's America, it's China, it's India, Malaysia, people will fly. If you bring down the price of gold, people will buy. You know,
Understood.
now if you offer the convenience of a QR code payment, maybe the question was not if, question was when.
Understood. Yeah.
So we have seen that QR code journey in China.
Hmm. Hmm.
And yes, China is a different market. There's a different set of people. There are cultural nuances there, but essential the technology vector was so huge
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
if you provide a payment mechanism, people will make payment. And I believe the step change offered by QR code was so huge that eventually somebody or other would have figured it out. We were
Understood.
just first of the many.
Hmm.
We get lot of this. The thing that we got lucky with demonetization. I don't think Paytm get enough credit for the fact that they have invested so much of they have front loaded so much of capital in teaching the Indians how to scan a QR code.
Yeah.
All our
Understood.
campaign during that time was not about Paytm, it's about QR code. Scan QR code, scan like click, scan point, click, scan. So yeah, where does the idea come from? The idea was there. In
Understood.
other countries, people were using QR code, and it was only a matter of time somebody would have figured it out. Because all the vectors are moving in that direction. Yes, demonetization was a huge boost. It
Understood.
plays a catalytic role.
Yeah.
But as like any catalytic chemical, catalysm only expedite what was inevitable.
Understood.
So demonetization kind of expedite the inevitable was that people would have used QR code or something like QR code at some point in future.
Understood.
Thankfully we were the one who kind of happened to deliver it. In
Understood.
great scheme of things, we are all accidental details. If I would not have been there, somebody would have done it.
Sure.
So having said that, that's where the core idea came from.
Understood.
And then there are certain cultural nuances. So for example, in the early days of demonetization, people were took us like 4 days to get QR code sticker delivered to a merchant's address, and that too in like 2000 or like 1500 pin codes only. Now
Okay.
in between, if user have to take uh,
Money.
money, they can take a printout, or if user what a lot of people started doing was they start taking screenshot and giving it to everybody in their shop. So if there's a shop where 4 attendants are there, everyone will have the QR code on their lock screen, and now they can scan it. Everybody will show, okay, scan this QR code and make the payment. My Lalaji will automatically get the notification. That are something people figure out on their own, and then we productized it. So like I said, if the value you offer is strong enough, is like effect step change a factor of 5 or something, like delta 5, so that people go extra mile with you to experiment and figure out how to deploy it in the fabric of their day-to-day life.
Understood.
Yeah, that's
Understood.
it.
No, no, that is an
I mean, there are
awesome.
a lot of stories around it, like how people use it, how people start putting it on the wedding cards for shagun and all. How And it's very interesting that how the whole idea of shagun is very much similar to the whole idea of red envelope in China. Our first campaign was TVC of Paytm was around shagun,
Yeah,
so
Khalifa.
that's the thing. Yeah, that's the thing.
No, I think that is very, very, in a way, breathtaking how QR code led to creation of a new, I think, behavior which was not existing before, right? And this is not only for 1, 10, 100 people. I think millions, and now obviously potentially billions of Indians, right? So when actually demonetization happened, what was going in the minds of, let's say, product leaders, including you at Paytm, and then there would have been so many different ideas. And then obviously you mentioned that China had adopted something like a QR code, and there was obviously there, it was already
Mm.
there and working. So what do you think, that how did you prioritize going after this rather than maybe 100 other things that you could have done? What triggered us in that direction, and any learnings for all of us from there?
Like that day I was in gym and I had plans for dinner. So if there
Understood.
was anybody who was least prepared for demonetization, it was the Paytm. And it's like phenomenal how the entire company scrambled together and like rise up to the occasion. It's something highlight of my career. I still remember. Vijay was not in office. Vijay was in Bombay, I believe, that day.
Understood.
You know, so yeah, how we prioritize the whole merchant onboarding team where I was working, DIY merchant onboarding team. Our roadmap primarily consists of incorporation and all, and only a limited bandwidth was given to like code, self-serving QR code generation and all. And
Understood.
overnight we changed the roadmap. Every engineering bandwidth was allocated to this.
Okay.
It also speaks about the caliber of my engineering colleague who were able to deliver on this thing without doing a lot of architectural change. The whole resilience of the architecture or the flexibility of architecture was such that if overnight
Yeah.
something needs to be done, they were able to deliver. So
Awesome.
yeah, so we prioritize self-service, we prioritize account creation, MID creation, things like that. Everything which is a dependency on giving the merchant activation need to be prioritized first.
Sure, sure. But before we deep dive, I think thank you to you and your team. I think for helping us during demonetization and even today, right? I think they have done a phenomenal job in terms of building a new behavior. One of the things that I've realized is that earlier, when we look at Paytm, right, and a lot of new fintech assets that came into India after Geo, uh, people initially, maybe not people at large, but people in tier 2, tier 3 towns were really worried that whether the money that is flowing into this QR will actually hit my bank or not. So what were the realizations then, and how did the team actually translate those insights into some of the product features?
I mean, payment success was a
Mhm.
status which essentially need to be communicated very unambiguously.
Understood.
So basically, it has to be shown graphically, reinforced in auditory cue that 10 payment. Then at the same time, you are not the only party; it's a two-party transaction. So you have to basically get a confirmation for the merchant side of this. That's where the sound box come into the picture.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and it's a journey. And then you realize the most the most reaffirming thing was the SMS.
Understood.
That ये बैंक से एसएमएस आ गया है कि यहाँ पैसे आ गए हैं, so then it's okay, everything is well and good. So yeah, we have to basically prioritize all those things and say just not that key. one signal was enough to confirm people that okay, your money has been deducted and it's reached to the intended destination. You have to
Understood.
basically reinforce through multiple. You have to send an SMS. You might at some point you have to send a WhatsApp message also, and email also. It's like
Understood.
with recharge.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in recharge, if you look at with every touch point, you get an SMS, you get an email, you get a WhatsApp message. Same goes with payment.
No, no. I think what I was trying to hint at is that trust, enabling trust for people, particularly in the financial products, is a very, very
Hmm,
key differentiator on what products actually grow very
hmm,
well, what products are not able to. And Paytm
hmm.
there, I think, has seen massive upliftment in terms of user base, right? Any insights, any learnings from the scale management, Prashant, before we deep dive into another aspects?
Scale management in the sense the resilience of the infrastructure or scale management of the scale of the user base.
Scale of the user base, how different they were, and how did you build trust at scale that yes, we are handling your money properly, if we have your money in your wallet, if we have your money transacting through us, all of
Hmm.
it is safe.
Yeah. A lot of it essentially boils down to your communication ethos. So if you are uh, some people these days on the name of growth hacking, hide the extra surcharge.
Yeah,
If you're
yeah.
upfront about it, I don't want to name, but if you're upfront about it, you can easily see that okay, these guys are very clear. This is the money deducted. This is your bank transaction number. If you want to get in touch with us, we're not shying away. Here is the button, press it, and our executive will be on phone with you.
Understood.
That kind of a product led availability.
Understood.
The
Yeah.
biggest thing is availability. That's why people are more comfortable buying offline, because if something goes wrong, I can go and get hold of the customer,
Yeah.
the executive. So that thing helps you. That along with the reinforcement from our TVC, our campaign, that
Understood.
also kind of help, where it says, okay, these are not fly by night operator. They are running a TVC. They have a holding.
Understood.
Third point is essentially because it was a microtransaction based system, so people can always run a microtransaction with 5 rupees. 5 रुपए के लिए चल रहा है 10 का करते हैं धीरे धीरे that journey goes to 5,000 and then people are paying their domestic help through monthly salaries and all through Paytm and all. So that's the journey, and comfort come from your communication, comfort come from your transparency on the screens, comfort also come from social proof. So all
Understood.
kind of things happen. Yeah.
Understood. Understood. So while building things at Paytm, any key insight that you believe that you got from user behavior which was something not expected? So given all your decades of experience before and during
Mm,
Paytm, anything you
mm.
felt that was counterintuitive to, let's say, user behavior principles that you had learned?
Well, one thing we learned was essentially that we as a product manager tend to think that the world revolves around our product. Our product is a tiny little part of the user's universe. They have other
Yeah.
concerns also. How do
Understood.
you fit in non-intrusive manner?
Hmm.
Is the key learning. So, for example, we used to have model of a user where we used to think that if we give them more convenience and if we give them more price competitiveness, people will buy stuff from me.
Yeah.
Give them cheap, ship it to them fast. So in Paytm Mall, we run a campaign where we said that okay, we will ship it to you.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Now, if you pay COD, we will charge you X, and if you pay upfront, we will charge you less.
Hmm.
The problem was people were still not placing the order.
Acha. Understood.
More order was still done on COD, and the reason later on we figure out after a long time was because if you are doing a COD, the jeans was being picked up by mom at home, who will
Okay.
pay,
Understood.
and it will not come from the youngster's pocket money. And
That's
and if I'm paying through online payment, it will come from my pocket money. Turns
hmm,
out this is the same dynamics which works in hotels also.
hmm, hmm.
A lot of hotels also have PAH, pay at hotel mode.
Okay.
And almost in every case, if you pay upfront, the cost is less.
Yeah.
But a lot of people who are making the payment, they still choose to go for um, PAH, pay at hotel mode. And the reason being, yes, there is security and you can always cancel and refund is problematic and all those things are there. But one factor there is essentially the person who is making the booking and the person who will be traveling are different.
Okay.
So then they say, okay, वहीं पे वही देख लेगा यार, चलो, so that's
Understood. Understood. No, I had never imagined that that can also be one of the reasons that people, let's say, making a transaction and people placing an order can be different, and
so
that can
yeah.
be.
I mean, people making transaction are different. Sometimes we used to think that payment is a very solitary activity where you you make a payment like this. Turns out payment is sometimes a very social experience where like 10 of your college friends are standing on your shoulder and you're making a payment for your pizza and all. And suddenly if you show the wallet balance on the payment screen, people say, "Sir,
Oh,
let's order another round of pizza." You know, so you have to take consideration of that thing also
understood.
sometimes.
Understood. No, I think while we deep dive on this, Prashant, I think how did the team and all of you come into realizing this? Was it through, let's say, users writing that, hey, today I had to order another round of pizza because of your product? Or was it mimicking the user in some social settings or observing them on how they actually sort of live?
Usually
What,
user interview, talking to them,
understood. So you'll
and
recommend that.
sometimes
Sorry, please.
sometimes it becomes a folklore. So you
Understood.
go from one team to another and all.
That is quite exciting on how, let's say, each of the minor changes have happened in Paytm, and then obviously it has now become a very, I think it is integral part of how all of us live our lives. But one thing that all of us also wonder, Paytm started from cashbacks, then obviously now UPI, and then eventually a lot of other things as well. What do you think during this journey from a purely product perspective, when, let's say, cashbacks was there in from a wallet perspective and UPI, and we were teaching user to sort of get
Mm,
habituated to all of these new ways of making a financial
mm.
transaction, where till what extent do you think all of these incentives actually worked in shaping the behavior? And if you were to think of the long term behavior that has been set up as of today, where do all of these sort of come in very, very handy?
See, cashback is not necessarily a new thing. Cashback or discount, deep discount are essentially nothing but a way to offset the fear of trying a new thing.
Also.
And I believe our cashbacks were very, very modest in the
Understood.
sense like when PayPal in a
Hmm.
similar domain, if you compare, when PayPal started, they used to give $20 for every sign up
Understood.
and like some $10 for every subsequent referral.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
theoretically, you can make a decent 100 and $200
Yeah.
just through referrals of PayPal.
Understood.
Comparatively, we only give like 50 rupees of like 20 rupees of signing bonus and 50 rupees in first recharge. So I think it was very, very little in the scheme of things. And given that people were coming for the first time on internet and they were making a financial transaction, I think it was a reasonable and sane strategy to try to offer cashback to incentivize this thing.
As a PM, I think just one learning that I would want to have on this, that how did you decide the amount that would be needed and how many times where, let's say, user would get habituated to replicate that activity? So basically, because this is, let's say, a very, very massive item on, let's say, a large
Mhm.
PNL, how
Mhm.
do you make those decisions, and what would be your guidance to people designing similar incentive, let's say, elements to tweak behavior or build or shape new behaviors?
Usually, it's more of a convenience versus the friction debate, not the amount. So, for
Understood.
example, if you are asking somebody to come for the first time and recharge on Paytm, yes, 50 rupees is good enough for them. But
Understood.
once they have done it twice and you have made it friction free for them, all the billing details are, for example, take example of electricity billing,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So if all the billing information, account information are already saved and it's just one click payment, then
Hmm.
I don't think you need to like make any incentivization there, because
Okay.
now the friction of
Hmm.
moving from one platform to another, re-entering those 18 digit number, God bless the electricity provider, that the
Yeah.
friction is so huge
Yeah.
that for 50 rupees nobody is going to go there, you know.
Understood.
Once in a while if they drop off, you can like use it as a re-engagement trick, but not on an ongoing basis. Again, this is a very domain specific. This might not work for school fee payment, by the way.
Understood.
Because the amount is huge and the frequency is less. But if there is a high frequency use case and where there's an inbuilt friction because of the account ID or some other billing detail, these things works.
Understood.
You have to find those pain point in your flow.
Understood. You are saying that basically, if it is a difficult flow and maybe is less frequent, then it would be difficult, but then the
Yeah.
incentive has to be much higher. If it is, let's say, a easier flow, then you have to keep incentivizing few times to build that repetition
Yeah.
and, let's say, habit.
Yeah.
Understood.
Sometime an difficult flow later on become easy. Like if you look at the onboarding of cred,
Yeah.
before cred, the credit card payment was like you have to put in all the numbers in, and now they fetch the credit card detail on your own.
Yeah.
Things like that. Account aggregator will again remove a lot of friction. So that's it.
Understood. Understood. So, before we move on to the next step, Prashant, I think Paytm started from, let's say, the tier one India, then went to the tier two India, then tier three and tier four, or what we call
Hmm.
as the NHB audience. So, if you look back across the different scale, both from
Hmm.
tech, product, and design perspective, any key learnings that you felt that you continuously got surprised as Paytm was scaling into the deeper parts of India, and any guidance for all of us?
We underestimate the next half a billion user NBU because their medium is different. So I believe that voice, and if you want to understand next half a billion user, you
Mm-hmm.
should look at voice and video. A lot
Okay.
of people don't understand that for next NBU or NHBU as you call it, they are semi-literate people. They are the people who know how to read and write, but they're not very proficient in it because their day-to-day life don't require them to read write a lot.
Yeah.
In that context, this helps you overcome the literacy barrier on the creation side, and video helps you overcome the literacy barrier on the consumption side.
Yeah.
Anything which takes care of that and exploit that will be a big hit. So no wonder we have lot of like YouTube Shorts or Instagram Reel or TikTok when it was available was very popular. TikTok was a grassroots phenomena first, and it came to urban India little later, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
was not accident because it was video and voice based thing. You see a lot of this voice based dictation applications and all, they will be very popular because now you can write just by speaking to your phone, right? So I believe anybody who, we tend to kind of discount that intelligence. People are very very resourceful because you have, when you have to survive with a very little salary in a very harsh economic climate, you become very resourceful. And
Yeah.
I don't think product managers specifically kind of appreciate that. I
Understood.
was interviewing somebody for a job position, and he has a certain ask in terms of salary. And I said, okay, that's not my place to debate whether you should get this or not. But don't you think, like, how do you think that somebody who's your user, who's working in, let's say, Infosys and living in Bangalore for 7 lakh a year, how do you think they're surviving? He said, I can't survive. I don't know how he is surviving with the family. I can't survive in Bangalore for 7 lakh a year as a single person with no
Understood.
EMI, no burden, no family. That person actually need to learn how the what resourcefulness means. And if that person might not be the right person with that kind of attitude to build product for NBU, you should be able to. You don't have to live in their home, but you should be able to imagine yourself in their shoes at least.
Understood. No, no, that is very. I think that in a way, I think whenever I've been building products for NBU, I think sometimes it is very, very difficult to understand the challenges that they operate in. I think we were talking to Saurabh, who was the VP of product at Hotstar, I think, and we were debating on what micro monetization for, let's say, episodes looks like, right?
Mm,
Because in the past, when I was at Doubtnut, we used to realize
mm,
that kids, just because they were very excited about education and tech, used to borrow
mm,
phones from shopkeepers, take it for an hour, solve and learn and do problem solving on the app for an hour, and then delete the app and give it back to
mm,
them. So while the app was doing a very great job, they were worried that they have used someone else's phone for learning, so they should remove the application before they hand it over, so that they don't feel that we have downloaded something new and then how it will work, right? So I think we felt that we are maybe not doing a good job, but we were doing very good job, and the app was getting deleted multiple times. We only realized it because we were living there for a
Oh
while
yeah.
and we saw that behavior. So those kind of insights, and as you mentioned, resourcefulness, right? We always believe that the number that people are adding to because login right in the phone or the app,
Uh,
we
uh,
realize that these people borrow phones, maybe use someone else's number, and then sort
uh,
of utilize for the solution that they really want the product to fulfill, and then maybe give it back. And some of our reactivation then were spooking out these original device or number owners. So I think a bunch of insights, and hence I marry that unless and until you can think, live, and maybe believe in how these people are, I think you'll not
uh,
be able to do very, very good product
exactly.
management about them. One thing that I wanted to understand, because I think we have been talking only about product, but the marvel in terms of technology that Paytm and then Shifu has been. So, how
Uh,
have you personally, as a PM? I think there is always this debate, right? How much should we know about technology? Where should we draw the line, right?
uh, uh,
So, what has your learnings been about that, Prashant? And as Paytm was scaling up and building for, let's say, new audiences, for
uh,
example, devices that do not work at the right sort of
uh,
speed, or let's say
uh,
weaker networks, how did Paytm scale all of these transaction challenges? And where did
uh.
you? So, what I'm coming at is that did actually having a good understanding of tech from your previous role as an entrepreneur help you in this case? And would you recommend people to pick up or be more tech heavy to succeed as a PM?
I mean, that's a double-edged sword, and I don't think that anybody need to be tech heavy or tech savvy or like a coder to kind of make a case for user what is
Understood.
right for user. Anybody from a office boy to CEO can make a case if they understand their insight is right. The real problem is that once our insight or a research is not like have enough gravitas, we start throwing a lot of jargon, and we
Understood.
have to like use the crutch of our tech savviness. As far as how much engineering familiarity a PM should have, I believe a PM should know enough engineering or technology to have a decent conversation with engineering team.
Understood.
Beyond that, it's intrusion into their territory. So for example, one filter I have is I should know what the technology is capable of, and I should not be worried about how unless
Understood.
I ask been asked for. So if you basically limit yourself to what, have an understanding of how it is being done, but that is for your own understanding only. Don't expect that how to be religiously followed. That's the thing.
Understood.
How did Paytm scaled up to the challenge of low power device and all? Again, that's a somewhat of a myth that devices on the lower price point are as the device price point are going down, the capabilities is not as falling as much. You know,
Understood.
so our engineering was very sound in terms of having a low application footprint and memory requirement or low API. The real problem is a lot of spam apps get
Hmm.
installed.
Hmm.
So you and I might not witness it, but if you go to your hometown and you'll see your dad's phone, you'll find
Yeah.
out that what are these 20 app installed? Who installed this? And turns
Yeah.
out, some growth hacker has managed to push it into your app phone. So yeah, that was a bit of a challenge. So we have to do a lot of memory optimization, both in terms of device footprint as well as an API payload.
Understood. Makes sense. But I think the journey at Paytm was very, very exciting across all of these aspects. Any
Yeah.
key summarization in terms of your entire journey at Paytm that you would want to sort of share before we move ahead?
And I'm fortunate to have a ringside view of the whole thing and won't trade it for anything else. People to I work with some great people. People tend to equate it with like saying that that must have been a rewarding experience financially and this and that. Yeah, that's one part of it. But actually, the real meat of the experience was being in trenches with some very smart people.
Understood. Yeah.
I won't be able to say one key learning because there were many, and we talked about few of them here. But yeah, won't
No,
trade
no.
it for anything else. We'll probably do it for free.
No, no, I
Yeah.
understand. And I think there are a lot of people out there in the product design ecosystem, Prashant, who would willingly trade that, and I think are very jealous of what you have seen. I think being part of, let's say, the
Okay.
demonetization and part of the QR journey, which has really shaped the Indian.
Demonetization is once in a lifetime thing, and I'm sure as the thing is people tend to
And I hope it remains once in a lifetime thing. Just kidding.
yeah, yeah. People uh, people tend to overestimate the effect one year or one event have on ecosystem
Yeah.
and underestimate what can be done in 10. So it's like the real impact of geo, real impact of cell phone, real impact of UPI is now being felt.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's very slow, glacial pace. So that's why.
No, no, I think that's a very, very articulate way of putting it, that you underestimate what you can do in a year, but overestimate and miss the changes that can be done in a
Yeah.
decade. And I think if I look back 10 years, I think in 2015, the access to technology and how we were doing maybe not only sort of financial transaction, but a lot of other behaviors were also very, very different. And if I
Mm.
look back
Yeah.
today, I think all of our ways of learning, of, let's say, even ordering food, as basic as eating.
Ordering food. Beggars are carrying around the QR code. Who would have thought? In
Yeah,
Bangalore red light crossings,
yeah.
they come and say, "Okay, you don't have cash, no problem. I have a QR code. You can pay me through
That
QR
is
code."
true digital revolution at scale.
Yeah,
No, I think I can also, I think you would also be now looking back, be able to see and connect the dots of how your journey at Shifu and then Paytm
yeah.
eventually, obviously landed you at Jar, where now only, not only from a vernacular but localization perspective, but those minute transactions which you are designing for, let's say, the reluctant saver and investor in India at scale. So, so if you could sort of, before we deep dive into further, how did you make this decision of joining Jar very early in its vision, is what we know. And where do you think that all of these things now come together to shape what you are doing now and leading the product entirely?
See, I'm not the one kind of person who do very rigorous career planning,
Understood.
So most of the time, my decision to join or not, or take or not take a assignment is based on the kind of people I get to work with. I
Understood.
knew the founder of JAR from my time in Delhi.
Yeah.
So Misbah is an old friend. So we decided to work together based on primarily the kind of people Misbah, Nishya and all. So yeah, that's how it is. I like the idea. I like the domain. That
Understood.
really, no doubt helped. But yeah, it's primarily the people.
So P for product manager, but P for also people manager,
People.
because you
Yeah.
have to manage people in your life to land the opportunities that you did.
Yeah.
But I think coming to Jar, and I think before we move into the details, I think some fantastic work, and congratulations on the recent. I think you mentioned that we are doing very well as a business as well. But I think
Mm,
otherwise, we really look up to Jar today as one of the pioneers in setting up new behaviors of micro investing in a way. Uh, so when you were starting out and in the early days, if you recall any product experiment, set of product experiments which you launched, which were basically, let's say, which really worked in sort of creating that regular habit. Because when I see, as let's say, Jar or any other product in this domain, right, maybe investing one time is actually something that I would do, but investing at every transaction, at every change value which Jar captures, right, what were, let's say, key insights or key product releases that helped you realize that yes, this was possible, and then you sort of double down on and built on scale?
such instances, one thing I tell you is that, like you touched upon the topic of trust, right?
Yeah.
And we realized through our initial experiment and releases that people tend to the cohort of people who are repeat user tend to do one deposit and one withdrawal. They buy gold, keep it for some time, maybe same day or maybe next day, and they say, okay, let's see, बेचते भी हैं नहीं 10 रुपए का gold खरीदा, and then 10 rupees they want to exit the system. So they have seen the whole system
Okay.
working end to end, and then
Yeah.
it come back and they do the repeat transaction. And after 5 or 10 such repeat transaction, they say, okay, now I trust these guys and the system seems to work. Why I need to come back and again? Let me set up the auto pay, and then they set up the auto pay.
Awesome.
So now there are certain threshold we know, but at the same time we realize that we used to look at numbers very rigorously, and we realize that people are selling a lot more uh, towards the end of the month.
To pay the
You know,
financial debt. Yeah.
to the parent, because they have a cash flow crunch and they have to jump that hop. So, but we never really thought of it like that. So we called people and figure it out
Understood.
just by speaking to them. Yeah, then you that kind of gives you an insight how your product is setting into the fabric of their life. You know, for you it's a goal saving app. For them it's a cash flow management tool. It's like
Understood.
good luck.
Yeah.
It's a good luck. You have good luck, and suddenly you need some cash. You break the good luck. That's the real utility for some people. So yeah, different people, different use case, and then you have to make flows to reinforce that use case.
Understood. Understood. But I think what captures a lot of us, or let's say
Mm,
people in the product domain's attention, is
mm,
that I
mm,
think Shifu and Paytm were, in a way, I think more formal, more tech oriented, and but Jar seems to capture the nerves of people by really thinking in their feet, right? And I think
mm,
you, just from the notification perspective, sometimes you also use humor, use
mm.
memes, and even I think the famous Vasuli nudges that you send, right? So what do you think that led to you not follow that typical fintech playbook of being very professional, etc., and how did eventually, how did humor, etc., actually help you in getting, let's say, those reactivation nudges actually working?
I'll answer it in two ways. One is actually on an application level, another is more of a broad industries level. Okay, in application level, I'll say that one of the core dictum, one of the core principle we have at JAR is essentially to say that every piece of software which ships under the JAR application, it should be super easy to use. It should
Understood.
be as easy as you creating a TikTok video
Mhm.
and as reliable as Amazon delivery.
Awesome.
you know, so basically every bit of complexity has to be hidden from the user. Unless you need a user input, don't ask for it you
Understood.
know and most fintech applications look like a means like blue and white grid,
Hmm.
and that blue and white grid is overwhelming for my user base because they are not in habit of seeing those formal documents and things like that and all. My user is the one who is playing TikTok videos and who's watching a lot of video content and playing games, ludo and all. So
Hmm.
that motive, that color palette is kind of more comforting for him. So you take that color palette, hide the complexity, and present a fintech flow in a way which is more conducive for his uses,
Understood.
not risking security or reliability. And then you have so that humor becomes a part of it. You
Understood.
know, now you go to a ICICI bank, corporate banking, yes, they talk to you in a certain way. But if you go to a local shop in a village in North India, they are more colloquial. So that
Hmm.
language has to be more colloquial, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that's where that those funny messages and those funny tonality of messaging communication comes from. Other part is essentially an observation we had about the industry. Like somebody told me that there are more unique Bitcoin user in India than Demat accounts. That
Okay.
tells you something.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
that is very
there's
powerful.
another interesting thing is um, this is a very famous. This is one question which I ask every PM aspirant for interview, and that is, let's say there is an application X, and this application has a certain asset class, gold, stock, or something, and this has all the product of that asset class listed there. You can create a basket of those product and put a money on it, and based on real world scenario, you either incur a loss or book a profit.
Understood.
Which app I'm talking about?
Understood.
You know, so most people will say you're talking about small case. Yes, I'm talking about small case, but I'm also talking about Dream 11. If you look at from the capability and cognitive capacity, cognitive power standpoint, small case and Dream 11 are essentially doing the same thing.
Fair point. Yeah. I never
You know,
looked at it, by the way, in that sense. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, but they're doing the same thing, right? Even Paytm Money is offering the same thing for
Yeah.
10 rupees. People are not using it that much. They are willing to indulge 10 rupees on Dream 11. Why?
The chances
Any
of
10
success
rupees,
are
which,
very high.
that's one thing, but I believe the whole gamification is the factor, secret sauce. If
Understood.
you make Paytm money with the same price point in a motive of gaming and all, I think that will unlock the new market. Right now, that whole market is very much corporatish,
Yeah.
which doesn't appeal to my user base. So that's an
Understood.
ecosystem level take I have, that essentially a lot of our standardized template for user education, onboarding, or flow design are very, very metro centric, where people are in habit of looking at very clean offices and, like, chrome and glass finish. NBU is messy, NBU is more vibrant, and so that your design choices should reflect that.
Understood. No, no, I think couple of really great couple of insights. One, if we were to actually gamify investment or saving in a way, I think we'll see much more active participation, because maybe the
Yeah.
traditional form and shape does not excite the
Yeah.
next half billion users in India. And second, you also
I mean,
mentioned about, yeah, sorry, I'll let you complete first.
yeah, I mean, if you look at first AC booking stats, that tells you another interesting story. In a first long haul train journey from, let's say, Bangalore to Jaipur or Bangalore to Guwahati, all those first AC tickets are being sold at least 3 months in advance,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
At that time, that price of ticket for airline and price of ticket for trains are roughly the same,
Yeah.
and if we shift half of the train passenger to airline, we'll have to double our infrastructure. Do you see how much of pricing power? And, like, it takes, like, a journey from here to Jaipur will take 2 days in train,
Hmm.
and it takes 2 hours, 3 hours in a plane. Do you see how much of value can be unlocked if we simply make plane journey more accessible?
Yeah. That
So,
is
but we
definitely
don't talk to that. We don't talk to that user. They don't consider them their customer.
understood. No, that is very interesting. I think I never thought about it. Actually, the fare at a lot of train journeys and flights is actually, maybe some flights are cheaper nowadays,
Yeah.
but still people prefer, let's say, trains. So yeah,
Yeah.
I don't have an answer right now, but some
Yeah.
homework for all of us who are listening and to this session. But on an overall level, I think second point that you also mentioned, Prashant, was around how vibrant and messy the NBU is, right?
Hmm.
From that perspective, it also brings me to the aspects of design, because we have been talking about product and tech right till now,
Hmm.
but design is also a very, very important aspect, or let's say the user design and the user experience.
Hmm.
So what were,
Hmm.
let's say, some of the few experiments that you believe across your career that have made you realize the value of product design? And secondly, particularly at jar or maybe interacting with the NBU audience, any
Hmm.
key learnings that you have had, or what works for them and then what does not, and maybe if you learned it the hard way by a product not working out, I think that would be very exciting and insightful for all of us.
Learn about design is essentially, design is what works.
Understood.
Okay, sometimes you go into a design exercise thinking, having some preconceived notion, and you should be very much flexible with that.
Yeah.
That you should see, okay, I decided this is an icon or this is a flow,
Hmm.
but that's not culturally relevant. For example, we have to explain the idea of rounding off, right?
Understood.
And we went with an idea that, okay, this is how round off works, that if you're paying 13 rupees, 7 rupees, and it's become 20 and you can save it. But that never really worked.
Understood.
We have to take a very locally relevant motive, that, hey, so in UP you have to show a panwala, in Calcutta you have to show a puchka, in South India you have to show something like a nariyal pani vendor.
Acha, awesome.
And that's where you understand that, okay, here I get chutta. In the same way, the Paytm in their first TVC show, chutte ki khich khich ko band karo type.
Hmm.
So basically, design is something where you are able to bring a resonance with the
Understood.
user.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's come through communication, sometimes it comes through visual, sometimes it's come through workflow. And
Understood.
for a good experience, all these three should be in harmony. There are lots of stories one can say that For example, in Paytm, we were building merchant dashboards,
Okay.
and we build it mobile first, this and that, all very good. Then we launched the desktop version, and we went there and we showed it to people. And they said, we don't like your dashboard. We said, why? Because I'm a wholesale merchant sitting
Hmm.
in a very cramped room in Palika Bazaar. My laptop or my desktop is put on a stack of boxes, and I operate through tab.
Okay.
Now your flow should be tab operatable. Have you even tried to operate through tab and enter button? So it's really painful. So now that becomes the dictate that okay, every flow should be operatable through tabs and keyboard
Understood.
for merchant,
Hmm.
wholesale
Hmm.
merchant onboarding flows and all. So yeah, these are the things which makes a good design. A good design is always a very well informed design, you know,
Understood.
and that's where I stand.
Understood. No, no, fantastic. So I think when we talk about the NB users, sometimes one of the hesitation that comes from them is that how much control they have on every aspect of the product, right? For example, in terms of jar, I believe, and please feel free to correct me. I think auto
Hmm,
pay and getting that access for their
hmm,
UPI is very, very
hmm,
critical for the success of the product, right? So
hmm,
how do you make sure that I think you also mentioned previously about one of the experiments on when people have done it 5, 10 times, then they
hmm.
enable that access for us. But how do you still make people at scale give that access? And secondary, how do you still give them this power that, hey, you have the entire control, and whenever you feel you can always come back and sort of take it away from us? So, how do you make the user feel that they are the one controlling us and not we, that we are shaping their behavior?
Thing is by being transparent,
Understood?
by giving them all the levers that support. This is the transaction ID. These are all the information about your transaction. So user understand that okay, these guys are not trying to sneak something in, right?
Hmm, hmm.
At the same time, being very patient. Sometimes people have like a lot of growth teams, and which are always in hurry to make you buy something. Kuch
Yeah.
kharido.
Yeah.
But being patient also kind of gives them, because trust is a slow process. So
Yep.
you have to be a little bit patient. Some people convert at 5 transactions, some people will convert at 100 transactions. So be it. They are
Understood.
they should be treated equally.
Understood.
Some people
Understood.
don't convert. They are just like MAU. No, they're not transaction user, which is fine.
Understood.
They will refer. They will refer new user, but probably they will not buy.
Not taking the plunge themselves, but getting other people.
Yeah, yeah.
No,
And
understood.
percentage of people who refer, again, if you want a data point, percentage of people who refer on an overall user base versus the percentage of people who refer from non-transacting, non-active user base is pretty much the same.
Oh,
So people who, explain it to me. Maybe they have multiple account. I don't know.
understood. No, no, that is exciting because referral generally happens in the traditional product world from promoters or people who are habituated in terms of using your product. But I think that is an insight that you have shared, that it is happening equally across the board. People who are
Yeah.
not diving into that behavior themselves. Understood.
Anybody who is coming for a certain number of days, whether they're transaction or not, the probability of them referring it to somebody is high.
Understood.
Bring them to the fold. Either they will buy or they will bring someone else into the fold.
Understood. No, fair point. So, when you look at your jar journey, any key user insight which you feel has been counterintuitive? One of them, I think you just mentioned that keep
Hmm.
bringing users back, even if they are not transacting, they'll bring someone else. But
Hmm.
about, let's say, the behavior that you wanted to build, about core behavior of saving, any insight that you felt is counterintuitive to what we believe, and how did you come across that? And any suggestions for us?
The one thing which I was personally very, very surprised or pleasantly surprised was
Mm-hmm.
that how much of that we come from a world where we think that tier 2 India is very patriarchal and where the women are not part of financial decision making
Yeah.
and all. I was pleasantly surprised to see how much of this is the collaborative decision making, in the
Awesome.
sense like family planning and families financial planning and all, they are all not done by a patriarch on the top of the family hierarchy. It's not a
Okay.
man's world. It's just women are like equally participating there. Not as much as it should be, but
Okay.
surprisingly high.
Okay.
For example, a lot of time we used to see that people are mm, user are using the product, they're going to the cart, adding something, but at payment page they drop off. Then they pick it up in the evening, and then the
Okay.
transaction get completed. Turns out
They
now
were
we
to
have our
discuss it.
user in no not discuss. Essentially, we have to cross to grid where people have own device or they also on the account. In order to buy gold, you need to have your own device as well as your own bank account, right?
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so they wait for the husband to come or the father to come, and then they say, "Papa, मुझे एक 10 रुपए का gold." Then they make the payment and 10 रुपए का gold आ गया. You know, so that is another persona we never thought. Okay, we thought device ownership and account
Bank.
ownership is same. No, this is two different thing. So people might have shared device, share account. They might have shared device, but separate shared account, but separate devices. So you have to plan for every scenario.
Understood.
I think
Understood. No, no, that is a fantastic insight. That how do we make sure that we are able to understand that device and bank
dynamics.
account are two very, very
Mm,
different aspect.
yeah.
Understood. And how do you think that it influences in terms of the quantum of transaction? Or do you think that if, let's say, one of the family member who is owning the or is the prime user, if they make that decision, they are allowed to go ahead? Or do you think that sometimes they also drop off just because there is counter opinion and there have been, let's say, some product interventions that you have to build so that any secondary opinion also gets negated?
Yeah, we have to make sure that all our offers are enough time bound that people who are like away for 8 hours
Awesome.
or long weekend they can make use of that promotion.
Hmm.
I think it's more might impact the frequency of uses, not the amount of amount. Only
Understood.
get impacted if your offers are like time bound. If you have like Akshaya Tritiya offer which will expire tomorrow, and your husband happen to be traveling and he is the one with the OTP of bank, yes, you will lose out on that action.
Understood. No, no, I understood. I think time bound nature of the offers is what you are trying to do then to sort of make
Yeah,
the decision making faster. In terms of jar, I think now you have also transitioned into more of, I think, gold jewelry, if I'm not wrong.
yeah, neck. Yeah.
So, how did that transition happen? And from a product perspective, what were the key insights that led to this decision as a brand?
So basically, what happens is over a period of like 3 years, a lot of people were there who were constantly saving and they had an accumulation of asset. There were
Understood.
a certain amount of jar gold. Now
Understood.
that jar gold right now can only be used for one purpose. You can keep it or you can
What did you?
sell it and in cash it. Right? We need another outlet for this. That
Understood.
outlet was jewelry. You can convert it for the same amount of jewelry. And that's where
Understood.
the next come into the picture.
Understood. And did it change anything on the, let's say, top of the funnel or anything else that were happening across the board?
Not much.
Understood.
We are still acquiring customer for jar, and
Okay.
then everything else is an upsell and cross sell.
Understood. Understood. No, no, I think a bunch of insights about that. But before we wrap up today's session, sir, I think today's world, in the age of AI, the field of
Mm,
product management is undergoing a change in some form and shape. So I
mm,
think a lot of people keep reaching out and, hey, I'm starting in product management, right? I'm sure you
mm,
would also be getting those reach outs. So what
mm.
would be your take on how product management is actually evolving at, let's say, as of today? And if you were to give that pathway to people, what would be your recommendation to sort of get started and how to build in the realm of AI? Maybe also if you could share that where exactly today you use AI and the associated tools for product management, what you feel is useful and what is not.
So I would like to distinguish in two broad segments. One is around building product for AI and building using AI in product building, right? I believe if you are working in something like a fintech or commerce or non-AI functions,
Hmm.
non-AI domain, where you have to use AI in building products or doing your day-to-day job, it's more than ever it's important that you should be very much first principle driven.
Understood.
You know, you should be able to, and because LLM will also reflect the crowd's opinion. what is majority viewpoint on the internet. uh, so it's more than ever it's important that you should be a common man or common woman to an uncommon degree. You should understand a common person, a common customer to an uncommon degree,
Understood.
because wherever is a gap in the LLM's understanding, you'll have to fill those gaps.
Hmm.
you know so for example, the famous example that all LLMs shows, it's very hard to generate a left-handed person image using the diffusion model, because the training data is always on right-handed model, right? Even before LLM, how many people have tested their app on a left-handed user
Fair point.
or colorblind user for that matter?
Hmm. Fair point. And any let's say AI tools that you believe that has helped you or the team become much more productive from a PMing perspective?
Usual suspect, like all the diffusion models, Chat GPT, Claude, Cursor, nothing
And what is your, I
exotic.
think the word around in the time is this fast fashion world of SaaS is about to come now. So Lovable and tools like Replit are, let's say, the hottest take in the market right now. So what is your take about, let's say, Lovable, and how should we use that in the field of product management, and how not to get carried away by it? Well, that is my take, but would love to learn your thoughts and opinion as
I mean, there's a new toy on the block. So yeah, people are excited and understandably so. I think as a product manager, it kind of solved one problem for
well.
me, is that once I write a PRD and
Mm-hmm.
I need to wait for the UX mockups and all from design, that delay can be now solved. I can basically create mockup very fast.
Understood.
So that's a very operational leverage these things offer. What's my take? See, at the end of the day, those are tools. And
Hmm.
we have seen multiple generation of tools where every time it was promised or threatened that a certain discipline was obliterated. So when Excel came in, people say, oh, are here, accountants are done. I don't see anywhere of them going. In due course of time, all the accountant who knew the formulas for correlation or statistical analysis or compound interest for that matter, or any other taxation and all, those people used to remember that by heart and they can do those calculations by hand, right? Now you don't see a accountant with a calculator. They use Excel.
Understood. Yeah.
In due course of time, all the programmers job will not be of writing code, will be of operating these coding tools, at least the entry level programmer.
Yeah.
So I
So you're
think
saying
the
the
what
profession
Excel,
itself will change.
yeah, professional change, and entry level skill will be to operate the Excel or operate the coding tools.
Understood.
Yeah, at senior level, I don't think much will be changed, not in short term.
That's a very hot take because there is a lot of debate going in the industry on how much, let's say, what of the professions will change and which will remain same, and then how do, I think
No,
one of
all
the,
profession will change.
yeah,
All profession baseline will change. No? For example, earlier when I started my career, people used to write MS Excel as a
skill in
skill
it. Yeah.
resume. Today it's like table stakes.
Hmm.
So, basic coding literacy will be table stake, which is okay.
Fair point.
Should have been.
And do you think that given now the PMs have an option to, for example, I am yet to see that massive productivity boost have happened in, let's say, engineering velocity across, let's say, multiple startups. But if, let's say, you have got a riverside view of, let's say, whether AI is actually enabling developers to ship faster, because then that opens opportunity for PMs to maybe try out much more ideas, right? Quickly. So how have you seen that playing around, and any things that we should be cautious about?
Well, human beings are very good at building inefficiencies and protecting it. So I don't think in short term we will see. Yeah, if you squeeze the shipping timeline, you will see that more rushed product will be shipped
Understood.
initially.
Hmm.
Later on, some stability will be there. So I'm not holding my breath.
Understood. Understood. No, no, fair point. Fair point. Awesome. I think that is the best way to end the podcast. And thank you for your
Sure.
time. Being very, very customer centric and always be first principle. And thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you, Prashant, for your time.